Hey there, business animals. It's Kim with Be More Business, and I am here today with Sarah Nicole Nadler with Fierce Feminine Finance. And believe it or not, you guys need to perk your ears up out there because I know a lot of you want to manifest more money into your business. And Sarah is a money coach that can help you get that done. I'm super excited that I joined Sarah's Profit Her program and I am deep diving into that and very excited about already the things that it has gotten me thinking about. And I just had my first meeting with her yesterday. So, welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I know this is very fortuitous timing.
Yeah,
We had
it
planned
is.
this weeks before we planned the other thing, so that's
It's
very funny.
We did. And then all of a sudden, here's the way it worked out, which is, I believe in divine timing. So that's all good with me. So let's start out by getting to know you a little bit. What has your entrepreneurial journey looked like? And what do you currently do today? And that may be a long answer, but feel free to take all the time you need.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll try to keep it short and hopefully interesting. I come from a business background. So my dad has been a business owner my whole life, and I started my very first entrepreneurial journey when I was 14 years old. I was living with my mom. My parents are split. I was living with my mom in a tiny little town in Colorado. It was a 30-minute drive to the nearest gas station. And I knew, going into my teenage years, if I wanted to have any friends at all, I needed a car. So I, asked my mom, "How can I make some extra cash?" And she said, "Hey, why don't you clean the house?" And I looked at her with a little side eye and went, "That's not going to earn me a car," So I called my dad. My dad was the entrepreneurial one, and I said, "Dad, I need to make some extra cash. I want to buy a car." And he went, "Well, why don't you take your mom's idea and turn it into a business?" So that was my first business. I was just cleaning houses for my parents' friends on the block. And when I was 18 years old, my younger sister was diagnosed with cancer. And I ended up very quickly having to move out on my own, actually take my baby sister with me. So there I was being a single mom to my little sister while our mutual sister was in the hospital. And I had ended up having to take that little side hustle cleaning houses and turn it into a full-time business overnight or starve. It was that or starve. So that was my very first business. 2 years later, my sister had passed away. My parents had divorced. I was going through a whole mess emotionally. So I ended up selling that business. That was the very first business I sold. I was just barely over 19 years old. Um, got out of business for a while, did some nonprofit work and whatnot. And then I built a second business and sold that. So I feel like my entrepreneurial journey has been very much out of necessity. Like after I ran out of money from selling the first business, I went and built a second one. It wasn't like, oh, I think I want to do this. It was more both times just out of like natural disasters in my life that forced me to go make money or else. Right. So really, I hit age 30 with no savings, no retirement plan, no investments. I'd built and sold two businesses, but really had no fallback plan. And I just kind of had this idea I was just going to work until the day I died. And finally, I got to a point in my life where I went, I have to change something about this model of building successful businesses, but never having any fallback plan financially. And so I decided I wanted to become a coach. I actually went back to school to get certified, get my MBA. And that was when I really started to decide for the first time, what is a business I want to build, right? Not out of pure necessity and like, well, I have to put food on the table, but like, what impact do I really want to create in the world? And for, a series of events happened over that year that really started to just push me in a certain direction. And you mentioned, Kim, divine intervention. And I really truly believe it was that just pushed me into this place where I suddenly realized that I had a gift for coaching. I had never known that before. I had a gift for helping women to build businesses successfully. And I wanted to use those gifts not just to become a business coach, which I feel like, there's business coaches that are a dime a dozen these days, but really to focus on money and wealth building and helping women to not get into the situation I had been in where, I've built successful businesses, built six-figure businesses, sold them, but still have no retirement, right? So I started going this direction and got my finance license. And that's where the idea for Fierce Feminine Finance actually came from. And it's been life changing for me. It's been life changing for my family. And it's, I hope, been changing a lot of women's lives. We've got quite a few success stories, but we're really, I think, in our infancy, even though we've been full time for 5 years now. I think we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, yeah. That's so it's interesting because I have conversations with other business owners, particularly about the necessity of building a business. And there are so many entrepreneurs who become entrepreneurs because it's the choice that they have, right? For me, I was in the I moved from a city to that little rural town, and I came here with a whole lot of skill set that no one needs. you know, I came with a lot of background and skill set with graphic design positions, marketing positions were not necessary. I came from a very large pharmaceutical corporation into this small community where there was no need for that. And so I often say I couldn't find the job I wanted, so I made up the job that I wanted. So I just sort
I
of
love
made
that.
up a career. I really truly did. And I wanted to be around horses and I wanted to be around agriculture. I love that part of my life. And I just said I'll go find the clients that are there like that. And then that became what I've done for 30 plus years now in stages where I've evolved in that process. So I love that story where you move through what you need to do into what feels really good and what you want to do. So the thing that I want to talk to you some more about in this story, and that I think our listeners would like to know, um, one of the themes, the month that your podcast is going to broadcast, the theme that I have picked is manifestation. So being able to actually manifest, and I think that that was another divine intervention where you moved out of the place that you were in the podcast rotation into this particular one. So, in Fierce Feminine Finance, what are some things that you would like to share to the business animal audience? And these are all business owners, small business owners, mostly mission based entrepreneurs around being able to manifest around money. Do you have any wisdom that you can impart in that?
I love that this has come up because this is a topic I am very passionate about. I am a very spiritual person in addition to being a religious person. And I believe very strongly that manifestation is 9/10 the battle when you're building anything, whether it's you're reshaping your body to lose 300 pounds or gain 20, right? Depending on
Yeah.
how you're trying to reshape it, or same thing with your business, same thing with your lifestyle, right? Like, take you, Kim, you walked into a town that had no idea how to fit you into the square peg of what they were used to, and so you just carved out a niche on your own, like that did not exist. And anytime we
Yeah.
walk down the road, we see every man-made structure you see was once nothing more than some crazy ranting person's dream, right?
Yeah.
Like skyscrapers. I mean, the idea that you could stack one story on top of the other at some point was groundbreaking and earth-shattering, and someone thought that the guy was nuts, right?
Yeah.
And now we walk around all the time in New York City and we're like, "Oh, that's cool." You know?
Yeah.
But I really believe that your belief in yourself and your belief in what you're doing has everything to do with your ability to actually achieve it. And I've seen business owners who stepped into that power and stepped into the manifesting what they want, totally blow my mind, do things that I would call miraculous because they were tapping into a power that has been woven throughout this universe. Dr. Jerome Groopman mentions in his book called The Anatomy of Hope that belief alone can alter your neurochemistry, right? So you have all these people who like think they need to pop a pill, and I'm not saying that that's always wrong. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
Don't take my medical advice. But is it possible that sometimes all we have to do is simply exercise that muscle of the first time you try to think positively, you're going to suck at it, right? And you try to manifest, you try to envision what your life could be, and you suck at it, and you're like, no, I have depression. Well, maybe you clinically have depression, but if you're just self-diagnosing, you know, then maybe instead of deciding you're depressed and that that's a label that you're going to put on yourself, maybe think about thinking positively as a muscle, right? The first time you walk into the gym, you couldn't lift 100 pounds. I know I couldn't, right? And after lifting 5 pounds for 10 minutes, you're like sweating, exhausted, and need your water bottle, right? It's the
Yeah, yeah,
same
yeah,
thing with
yeah.
manifestation. And so I think a lot of business owners and women in general, honestly, I see we have this tendency to try manifesting something one time, right? And then it doesn't immediately just pop into existence. And then we just back off and go, well, it wasn't meant to be. God didn't put that in my path. It what, you know, and they start self invalidating. And sure, again, I'm not him either. I cannot tell you what he has planned for you. But what I can tell you is that manifestation doesn't work that way, right? Money mindset doesn't work that way. And so when I have a woman come to me and she's got limiting beliefs, I'm not good with money, or oh, my partner handles that, right? And she'd like to see this dream come true, whatever that dream might be. It might be a Lamborghini or it might be barefoot on a farm, but she tried once to manifest it and it didn't work. I always go, okay, well, how many times do you have to go to the gym to lose a single pound? Right? Like, how many times do you have to eat well to lose that single pound or to gain the weight that you're trying to gain if you're negative, right? And so I think that that is the approach that I take to manifestation that is unique and different than some people, where, I do see a lot of entrepreneurial women, especially. Yeah, they try it once, then they go back to their tried and true. Well, like, if I can't touch it, it doesn't exist. And I go, well, that's nice, but you have to set goals that exceed your grasp, right? You have to set goals that exceed your grasp. And isn't that the same thing as manifesting?
Yeah, yeah. And I think and a lot of things that you said I want to talk about and dig a little deeper on. So one thing I need to tell my audience, Sarah and I are not buddies. You guys have met a lot of people on this podcast with me interviewing that are my friends, and a lot of people that are coming on here that are gestaltists. And Sarah probably doesn't know what the heck the word gestalt means. So
I have
what's
a vague
interesting,
idea, but
vague
only from
idea.
you.
Yeah, but only for me. Okay. So, one of the things that I find interesting about what you just talked about is limiting beliefs and about how you try it once or you feel like the universe is stacked against you because that divine intervention belief can work for you and against you. And I want to tell a story, particularly on my mother. So, my mother was a lovely woman who was probably born way before her time, and she also had this deep belief that if it was difficult, it was not meant to be. So I can remember as a little kid, we did a lot with animals and I showed chickens. There's a nice Kim trivia for you. And so we would go and we would look at show chickens at somebody's house and we would talk to the person and I would get all excited and be like, "Oh, yes, this is the perfect chicken that I want to add to my show string." And then I couldn't drive because I was a kid, and so she would have to drive to the farm. And if we got lost, I would have panic attacks because if we got lost enough, she'd be like, "This isn't right. We're not going." And so I would have to go find another show chicken to add to my string because it was too difficult to get there. And, as a gestaltist, I work with a lot of people's family and generational trauma and generational beliefs and beliefs that we get handed to us as kids and we just go, okay, I believe that too. And as an entrepreneur, I had to get the hell over that because there's so much of my entrepreneurial life that is hella difficult. And you can't just walk around with that belief that, oh, this is hard, so it's not meant to be. This is hard. And maybe what's meant to be is if you double down and get in there and figure out why it's hard and take that extra step. What's your response to that little story that I just told?
I love that we're going this direction because I also feel very strongly on the subject that you just mentioned because I have so many women come to me with a belief that is holding them back from taking action because they think like, oh, that's not aligned or that doesn't feel right or doesn't feel good. And I believe in trusting my gut. And when something feels off, like it feels icky, that's one thing, right? Like when something feels icky and you're like, this is out of integrity for me. I don't want to take on this client because it doesn't feel like I'm in alignment with their values or I'm in alignment with their belief system. And I feel like, like I've had clients try to hire me because they just opened a pot shop. And you know what? It's not the worst drug out there. I will agree with you on that. But I
Yeah.
am straight edge. I don't even drink alcohol, you know? So like there are a lot of businesses out there that I will just never help. Not to say that they don't deserve help. Those are good people who deserve help, but I'm not the right fit, right? So
Yeah.
there is something to be said for trusting your gut, but and do I believe in divine intervention? Yes, I absolutely do. But the parable that comes to mind the most, Kim, is one I was told, and I don't even know where it comes from, to be totally honest with you, but it shines so starkly in my mind at moments like that, where, you know, when you ask God for courage, he doesn't give you courage. He gives you opportunities to be courageous, right? When
Mhm.
you ask God for strength, he doesn't give you strength. He gives you opportunities to be strong. And so sometimes I think these opportunities fall in our laps where, I've prayed for strength and now I have something really hard in front of me, something that feels insurmountable, and this is God giving me an opportunity to find my strength. And instead, we go, "Oh, well, he put that barrier there. That means I'm not supposed to go that direction." And
Yeah.
just sometimes imagine God like face planting over and over again, going like, "Oh, didn't you ask for that?"
Yeah.
And I'm sure he has more grace than I've ever had in my, tiny little pinky toe. So he probably doesn't actually react that way, but sometimes I just wonder. Because yeah, like entrepreneurship is hard. If you look at the very definition of the word in the dictionary, it means a person who was willing to take massive risk. And sometimes that's going to be tough. And the fact that the tough has gotten going doesn't mean that you're not meant for that. And in fact, you may have in your makeup the only person who could overcome that. And you may be destined, in my opinion, for that. And if you really weren't, I don't think you would have the drive to do it. And I don't think you would feel guilty about not doing it. So that's my personal opinion. And I always try when I'm working with my clients to work within their belief system. And I don't believe it's my job to project my belief system on other people. But when asked my opinion, I always share it as gently as I possibly can because I do think that all of our growth happens outside our comfort zone. And sometimes you need to make yourself uncomfortable in order to make yourself move. And I think sometimes he knows you need it and does it for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting too how people hold the failure aspect of this. That's another thing where I see a major difference between people who are truly successful as entrepreneurs and people who, well, at life in general, and people who hide from it. I failed a lot in my life. I have screwed shit up. I have messed it up. I have lost relationships. I have done things that I'm not proud of. And then I have done things I'm exceedingly proud of and failed quite miserably at. I think the thing that I've learned from my mentors and that I really embrace in my life is I don't hang on to that because me hanging on to it is not going to do any good. Me letting it go and finding a better or different way or trying again at a different angle is probably much more the way to accomplish that hard thing than to just give up and say, I don't want to do this or this didn't work right this way. And I agree with you on the you've got to feel into yourself to be able to divide that. And back to women as well. I do think women struggle with that. I have we had an interesting conversation on this podcast ages ago, like 2.5 years ago, around imposter syndrome, which is this term that people use. And many times it's that uncomfortable feeling you feel in a room. And one of the interesting concepts we found in our research around that particular episode was, is that feeling because you're not welcome, or is that feeling because you've never been invited there before? And anytime you're in a new experience, it's going to be different, and it's going to feel uncomfortable, and it's going to feel out of your depth. And if you've gone from not having anything to having a six-figure business, and you feel like and you're an imposter, is that normal, or is that just another part of learning that personal growth experience to expand? I don't know. There was a lot in that. So sorry, I got off on a little tangent.
No worries. It's funny you bring that up because as you could probably tell, I'm not a big fan of labels, right? Like
Yeah.
labeling someone depressed, labeling someone this, labeling someone that. And imposter syndrome isn't even really a syndrome at all. It's not
No.
a diagnosable thing. It is a slang term that I think encompasses so many different emotions that sometimes we kind of lump them all together and just kind of try to label it. But in my experience, only when you tear apart something like that and truly identify what emotion you're experiencing can you actually find a solution to solve it, right? And I'll give you an example. Oftentimes I have women come to me and they say, "Oh, I have imposter syndrome." And then I dig in a little bit and I find out that they're trying to do something for someone else that they've never actually done themselves, right? And I have to break it to them like, "Look, honey, you don't have imposter syndrome. You're actually an imposter. Like you're trying to sell something you've
That's
never
legit.
done, you know?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're
And they're
legit.
looking at them, like, complaining about how they have imposter syndrome because they're trying to teach someone else how to start a business when they've never built one themselves, you know? So, like, I feel like it kinda gets to be that ridiculous sometimes, but then you have the flip side, where you have the woman who is a total expert at what she does and has lots of case studies, lots of success stories, been on this show, been on that. And she walks into a room, like you said, and she starts to feel like pushed in, made small, right? And sometimes it was something in that environment that caused it. Sometimes it's just a reaction, right? There's a trigger there that came in, and now she's feeling all in her feels about it. And in those moments, that's what the only thing I would really identify as actual imposter syndrome, if you're going to call it anything. And I
Yeah.
think it does come from something usually environmental, even if we don't aren't able to fully recognize where it came from. I have found that, it was a person's comment or it was someone who looked like someone who made a comment, and being able to identify your triggers, I don't think you ever really do that on your own. I personally invest a lot of money every single year into doing that deep inner work, spiritual counseling, searching for the answers in my own mind, in myself, in my soul, of like, why do I react to certain things? And I think until you've actually done that work, you're not going to know why that's happening. And again, I refer back to what we said earlier, where it's like, if you can't immediately identify the trigger and get it out of your space, then the best thing you can do is just manifest and work on your affirmations and work on positively deciding that, like, in this moment it doesn't matter how I feel. What it matters
Yeah.
is what can I project, right? Like professionalism in any work setting, any HR person will tell you professionalism is feeling one way and acting something else, right? Like whether it's how you feel about the employee or it's how the employee feels about the boss or how the employee feels about the job or the duty, that's what professionalism is. It's feeling one way and acting something else. And so I think that professionalism in an entrepreneurial setting is feeling like an imposter and deciding to go ahead and do it anyway and using your affirmations, using these other any other mindset tools you have to make it possible for you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. In the equestrian world, we there is a saying that courage is being afraid and saddling up anyway. And and I think that that's a true statement. As a matter of fact, that's somewhere in my office. Is it's hung up in here. I moved it recently, but it's an important sentiment to remember, I think, in life and in entrepreneurship. And another thing that I want to say around the showing up and doing it anyway, I'm really reminded of what it's like to catch a horse. So, um, the if you've never had to catch a horse in your life, I can tell you, if you walk into a field, the best behaved, best buddy horse that you have, if you go in that field with an agenda and and a really strict, I want to do this now kind of an attitude, um, that horse is going to be like, yeah, no. I have four legs and I can run a whole lot faster than you can, or I'm going to play this game where we're going to run around this pen a lot. And the key to that is to be able to calm your inner self and to be able to walk up to that horse for all the purposes in your life, to have an agenda to get that horse on a trailer, to take him to the vet, to get that horse up, to catch him to go riding. You have to walk in there by putting your agenda second on the rung and being able to A, stand in your authenticity because they can tell when you're not, and also be able to get the purpose done that you need to get done without them reading into that. And my horses are super keen anyway because they do the gestalt work with me. So they get to practice watching a lot of people have different reactions to situations. And it's a very interesting concept to for people to practice. And I love when people come here for horse work and they get to practice how to physically be in that space because the horse provides immediate feedback to that.
That's so amazing. It reminds me of growing up, my grandmother in upstate New York had horses, and so I didn't grow up around horses, but every about 2 to 3 weeks out of the year, once and twice in the summer and then once over Christmas, we would go up there, and I know exactly what you're talking about 'cause number of times I've chased a horse around a pen going, "Grandma, am I doing this right?" You know? Oh man,
Yep.
I'm dying over here. But you
Yeah,
have a lot of truth that you're speaking there though, because I mean, we teach our kids so many things, right? But I found that role play dies away after kindergarten. Like think of one class in first grade, second grade, third grade, or high school where you actually get to role play anything, right? And I feel like that's such a missing tool in our educational system because people don't have communication skills anymore, right? They don't have the ability to stand in their authenticity. And I think a lot of women are like, well, it doesn't feel authentic because I'm not actually emoting that right now. So how could I feel authentic and still be professional, you know? And so you get these things where people do odd things to their clients, like, blaming the client for not getting results and things like that because the coach doesn't have skills that even if they've read about that skill on paper, they never actually got the chance to go experience it and try it and practice it. And so I've never done gestalt work. That sounds amazing though. Being able to actually, practice that and then horses are very sensitive beings and having
they
one
are.
be able to tell you whether you're succeeding or not sounds very useful.
Well, and I think so in a lot of my work with Gestalt, it's helping people reclaim choice because we talked about reactions. Like you get triggered and you have a reaction. And one of the things that you had recommended it is go down there and find out what is that trigger? Why is this occurring? But so many times when we react, we don't stop and have the mindfulness to say, wait a minute, was that a reaction or was that a response? And a great deal of my work and the horses work is really centered, that type of work anyway is really centered around handing people back their choice to say, I want you to be able to have the latitude to choose your response to any given situation. And when you're coming at it from a place of trauma, or you're and trauma with a little t or a big T, and families traumatize each other all of the time. It's a very we none of us survive childhood without trauma. None of us survive relationships without trauma. None of us walk through this life without trauma. but to hand people back their choice. And what the horses really bring into that equation is the feedback to know when that is right, because we so much lose our authenticity in that process. We lose our parts of self, we lose track of who we are. And so, frankly, so many people show up here, they don't know who they are anymore. They don't know who they authentically are. They have this business that they're trying to build, and they're trying to figure out their brand message, and they're mission driven and they want to show up in that way. But then they try to figure out, like you said, like to do something that they were told to do, and it's not who they are. And then the horses really step in there to say, are you sure that's you? Are you sure? That doesn't feel like it's coming from the place. And boy, they can fool me. I'm a gullible person. I will believe anything. King and Prince, they're like, yeah, no, they're not being honest. And then I can,
Oh,
with my mouth, call them on it and say, really, is that coming from authentic place, or is it not?
that is really cool. That must be amazing to watch and to
It is.
experience.
It is. It is. So you'll have to come down and experience it at some point. Back to our money mindset conversation here, because we kind of got a little bit off track. Um, can you talk a little bit about what a money coach does? Because here's the thing I hear a lot of times from people that listen to this podcast is, I want to be more profitable. I want to make more money. I need to know how to bring more money into my life. What does a money coach do to help people facilitate that?
Sure. So I will say I can't speak to what all money coaches do. Um, I've worked with other coaches before, and what they do isn't always what I do. So I can tell you what I do. I have a background, like I said, in business, and the first few years of coaching, I focused purely on just making businesses more profitable. And usually, what that looks like is I would go into the business, roll up my sleeves, crack the hood, and go, which of their 8 basic systems are broken? Most people don't really think about business being built out of systems, or when they think of the word system, they think of like software. I'm talking about like your standard operating procedures, the processes and jobs and people that get specific definable results in the business. So you have like an HR system. If your HR system is broken, then you can't hire, or you hire people and they suck. Hire people and they're confrontational and they're gossipy and they laze about and don't get anything done. You wait too long to fire, or you fire too quickly, right? Those are broken HR systems. You also have a marketing system. Your marketing system is supposed to get people to raise their hand, right? And once they've raised their hand, the marketing system's done. You haven't made any money yet, right? Like then you have a sales
Yeah.
system. Sales is supposed to take the person who raised their hand and get them to pay money, right? So you have like these different systems in every business. There's no business that doesn't have these 8 basic systems. And so once I understood that, having worked in different industries myself, in my own businesses, I went into these different businesses and I found that universally, right, if they were unprofitable, there was a limited number of things that could be broken. And so I would go in, usually with a VIP day, or sometimes clients would fly me out, or sometimes they would fly in to see me. So in the beginning, it was very high touch. Clients were paying about 35K to work with me for a year. And the first few clients, I mean, 5 of those have now started earning $1 million a year. So I know that that system works. And that's really what I was doing in the beginning, was just money coaching from the sense of internal in the business. How do we make it more profitable? How do we make the owner more money without making it taxable income? Right. So there was some system fixing, and then also some bookkeeping that kind of went into that, of like looking through their numbers, looking through their profit and loss and going, where's the money going? How do we
Yeah.
extract some out without taxes, right? So that was kind of the first few years. Then like I said, I kind of made this pivot towards fierce feminine finance. And I started a blog because I had gone back to school to get my license in finance. And I thought I wanted to go work for Edward Jones, or, one of these Charles Schwab or something, and do wealth management. And after being in school and, working towards that degree, I started to realize that that's not really what I wanted at all. I wanted to help the type of women I was already working with, but help them beyond just the profitability. So once we got the business profitable, that's just kind of square zero. Now, what do you do with that money? And I was finding a lot of women like me were well, let me just reinvest it back in the business. Don't have life insurance, don't have a retirement plan, don't have any savings or reserves for that business, you know? And so one fall wind would knock that business over and they'd be starting from scratch, even though last year they made $1 million, right? Or three, 2 to 3 mil. And so I went, ooh, these women need someone who understands them. And a lot of the financial advisors I speak to, they'd love to touch that client, but they don't know how to speak to that client, right? A lot of women who built businesses, they don't want to be told about a 401k because 10% return sounds really bad to them. Like they're like, I could get
Yeah.
more than that just reinvesting it back in my business. Why would I pay you? Right. And their idea is, well, the business is my retirement plan. But no one's ever really taught them how to do that. Like, how do you make a business a retirement plan and how much of a business do you need to have for that business to be a retirement plan and how profitable does it have to be? There isn't really anyone you can go to at Edward Jones who will answer that question for you most times, right? So having this unique background in being a business owner, having celebrated my 30th birthday in that situation, and then now diving into the finance world, I found this perfect fit where I can help women to increase the profitability of their business. In some cases, start that business over, start it from scratch, do a total new pivot if that's really what they want, right? I try my best to salvage what we've got, but some women are just like, dumpster fire it. I want to go a new direction. Great.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I'm trying to get them beyond that and get them into investing outside the business, looking at how can we become financially bulletproof so that no matter what ever happens to that business, you will always be okay and your children will always be okay. And that really came from this place of one of my very first clients actually who, she paid 35,000 to work with me for 12 months. And at the very beginning, I was already kind of, I was going back to school. I was already kind of starting to hook into this world of finance. And I went, hey, I'm happy to help you with the profitability. That's what you hired me for. But I'm noticing you have no will, you have no life insurance, you have no savings for this business. Like, would you like some help? I'm happy to refer you to a colleague and help you set that up. And she's like, no, that's not what I paid you for. I don't want to talk about that. 4 months later, I called her office for one of our coaching calls, and her office manager told me, oh, she's not here. She's in the hospital. And I was like, whoa, what happened? Come to find out, she had had a stroke. This woman was younger than I am today. Okay. She was like
Yeah.
mid 30s, had a stroke. No one knew what happened. Come to find out, she'd had brain cancer. No one knew it. She never woke up. And her family relied on that business for their income. Her employees relied on that business for income. And because she was an expert in her field, it's not like we could just go hire someone. Right. And so
Yeah.
that business ended up being liquidated for a few $1,000s. And that was really the impetus that made me go like, whoa, wake up. Businesswomen need money coaches who will do more than just help them with profits. They need a business coach or they need a coach who's going to coach them all the way to financial freedom. And financial freedom is defined as being work optional, meaning like if you stopped today, you stopped working today and you never exchanged time for money ever again, the day in your life, would you financially be okay? And so that's the end game now. And that's where I'm taking my clients. That's where I've gotten to myself. And it's been a rocket ride of the last 5 years. But I am really, honestly, so excited about what we've built and really passionate about what we're doing.
I love that. And I love the manifestation for this particular conversation being that financial freedom. And in this day and age, as we sit here in 2024, and I'm so reminded all along the way of how far women have come in so many ways within my lifetime. My mother couldn't have a credit card, she couldn't have owned a business. And here I am sitting as the queen of my own domain here on the beer ranch. It is a different perspective, and there's a lot of education that I didn't receive because that wasn't even an option for the women that raised me. So I am looking forward to working with you on that. And if anyone else out there is resonating with that, message of wanting to achieve financial freedom, I encourage you to look up Sarah. And I've got two more questions for you, Sarah. But since we're at this point, how do people find you? Like, if somebody's curious, first of all, is there a qualification that they need to have before they reach out to you? Like, do they need to be at a certain level in their business? And then, secondly, how would they find you if they meet that qualification?
Sure. Yeah. So the one thing I will say is I work with women exclusively. If you identify as a woman, I will work with you. I will also say I work exclusively with entrepreneurs. So if you have a 9 to 5, but you have a side hustle, I'm happy to work with you. If you are a 9 to 5er and you're kind of like a corporate girly for life and you have not an entrepreneurial drop of blood in you, I'm probably just not the best fit. I'm happy to refer you to a colleague. I'm happy to give you a free 45 minutes of my time just because I want to help, but I'm not going to be the best fit for that woman. And I also will say I did actually create a gift that I wanted to give away to your audience. So I'm at whatever
Perfect.
moment you're ready, I'm
Yeah.
happy to share that with you guys.
Yeah, please go ahead. And whatever link that it needs to be, I will make sure we put that in the show notes in both YouTube and on Apple.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So if you are thinking about working with me, I always recommend just downloading this freebie because it will give you a perfect taste of what it's like to work with me. It'll give you a little bit of a concept of where we're going when it comes to financial freedom. It's called my How to Financially Bulletproof Your Family and Your Business. And it's just a checklist that you can download. But I've had a lot of women reach out to me and say, like, wow, the checklist alone gave me a lot of ahas of like what's missing from my financial plan, and you can find it on my website. It's fiercefemininefinance.com/bulletproof. And I'm sure Kim, as she said, will have that on the show notes page.
Absolutely. And while you're there, you can explore the programs that Sarah offers. So, Sarah, I always ask two questions of all of my guests. Question number one: my tagline or belief in my business is to create a business that supports the life that you want to live. One of the things that attracted me to want to work with you, as well as to have you on this podcast, is how you show up on social media with a huge smile on your face, having the time of your life. So, how have you in this business incarnation created a business that supports the life you want to live?
That is such a great question. So I will say, 7 years ago, I celebrated my 30th birthday with, like I said, no savings, no investments, no retirement plan. Today, I am on track to retire by age 45 if I chose to. So that has been a really big shift for me. And I think that the financial literacy of just studying everything I had to study in order to be able to serve the clients the way I wanted to serve them is what made that possible. But today I live on a 16-acre, off-grid homestead, grow my own food. I go days without wearing shoes. And I think understanding understanding digital marketing and automation and understanding how to utilize social media using the plan her profits method, which is, what you came to me for. But that is what has made this possible. And it was a long road. It's not like something I learned overnight. But I have gotten to the point where, I before I get out of bed in the morning, I usually just lie there and make a post. And takes me about 10 minutes. And then the rest of the day, I'm not on social media. I'll check in sometimes. Friends will message me sometimes and I'll reach out. But most of my day is offline and I like it that way and I want to keep it that way. And so I think you build the business you want to support the dream life you have, or the dream you have for your life. And so I see a lot of people who do it the opposite, where they're going to build this really hard, tough business with the hope that someday they'll convert it into their dream lifestyle or they'll retire out of it for their dream lifestyle. And I tried that the first two times. It really did mean completely shifting my point of view this third time and taking this business to be what it is today, which is a six-figure business that also requires less than 20 hours of my time every week and also does not require me to do anything that takes me away from camping trips and hiking and traveling and seeing friends and road tripping with my sister and stuff like that.
I think that's lovely. The other question that I always ask people, because this is the business animal, and even though we've kind of changed our focus a little over the years, it still is about so much about how animals impact our lives. And a lot of people that listen to this podcast have animal based businesses. So they partner with animals in some way. But we all benefit from the animals and nature in our life. So, is there a story that you can share around an animal or animals or group of animals or experience that impacted how you show up in your life and business?
Yeah, and this is one of the things that made me most excited to come on your podcast is because I do have a really I have an animal story that's very special to me, and I don't get to share it that often because it's sort of like a side plot to my business. But I think I shared with you that my sister had cancer. Her name was Emily, and she passed away. She was 10 years old. I was just turned 18 that year, and I have younger siblings. I have 5 younger siblings, and so Emily was just one of them, and a lot of them were young enough that they either don't remember Emily at all or, they were young enough to ask awkward questions like, "Where did Emily go?" You know? And it was hard for my parents, they had just divorced as well, so it was like a hot mess of a family, and so I was left answering a lot of those questions, and it was really hard, and so being a storyteller, being a total fantasy geek myself, I actually decided to write stories, fantasy stories about Emily. And this is one of the things that, while she was on hospice care, she had asked me, "Hey, I love the stories you tell me. Will you someday write a book with me as one of as the main character?" And I mean, when your 10-year-old sister is, on
Yeah.
hospice, you don't say no, right? So
No.
I said, yes, of course. And I've gone on to publish 4 young adult fantasy novels under a pen name, with Emily as the main character. And the way I explained to my siblings and later in the books, what happened to Emily is that she fell into the fairyland and she got bit by a were-bunny. And this were-bunny has, infected her with the were-bunny virus, and so she turns into a rabbit on the full moon, and that's why she can't come back, right, from fairyland. And so, years later, I would say 15 years later, my husband and I were at a fair, and we saw a bunch of rabbits for sale. And I went, "Oh, I really want a pet rabbit." And we had no pets at the time, not even a goldfish, and I was like, "We
Yeah.
really need a pet." And so we didn't end up buying one at the fair, but we did go to a farm nearby that not grew, that raised rabbits. And, and we met Cake. Cake is my pet rabbit. She is a Rex. She's totally
Ah,
beautiful. Yeah, she's wonderful, and she is, the sassiest boss lady rabbit you've ever met. She is also the most spoiled rabbit you've ever met. She does not live in a cage. She's free range in our house. We've bunny proofed the entire second floor, and so she hops from room to room. My husband and I both work from home, so she hangs out in his office. Sometimes she'll come out and hang out in mine. And she has an uncanny ability to know when I'm having a stressful day. You mentioned, Kim, that I'm always smiling on social media. I
yeah.
have intentionally made my social media a positive place, but being a business owner isn't
You
always,
have negative. Yeah.
laughter and butterflies. Sometimes it's really tough. And she just has this uncanny ability to know when I need her. She has childhood trauma. She will not let you pick her up. She does not like to be cuddled, but she will come and she will headbutt you. And she'll keep headbutting you until you get down on the ground and you pet her. And by the time you pet this soft, velvety, beautiful rabbit for a couple of minutes, you cannot be upset. It is just
Yeah.
impossible to be having a bad day around Cake. And so she's just become this wonderful, glorious part of our family and honestly the the morale officer behind my business. And I couldn't be more grateful for her love and for having her in my life.
That is so awesome. You're the first person with a rabbit story. I love that. And Um, being on the farm that I'm on, we have had, I think, every kind of animal here. At one point, we even had rheas, which are large rat-type birds.
Oh,
So
wow.
they were quite the experience. But over the years, we have had rabbits, and we've actually had Rex rabbits. And if I remember them correctly, they are incredibly, like, way softer than even a typical rabbit. Like their
Sure.
fur is like extra velvety. So I love that. I would love at some point in our own personal conversation for you to share a picture of cake with me. I think that would be awesome. But thank you for sharing that story. Thank you, all my listeners out there, for hanging out on the business animal with us today. I hope you've taken some things away from this episode that you can go and manifest towards your own financial freedom. I'll make sure I link Sarah's free gift for you out in the show notes. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the description below the video. Thank you, Sarah. Again, thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you next Tuesday.